So the disconnection, the dichotomy, and then the desensitized reality. That we're not grieving over the spiritual condition. They say that 1/3 of millennials have never stepped into a church. 1/3, that's what they say. Over 80 million in my generation, and the majority of them are unchurched. The rise of the nuns, you've probably heard of that. Not none like in the convent, but they have no religious affiliation whatsoever. Then you get a dude who's a cynic like Bart Ehrman, who comes along, resurfacing historical things that have already been worked out through church history and councils, confessions, and creeds, and he begins to doubt the inspired reality of the word. He begins to highlight factual things that seem like they're contradictory, and he now sweeps over my generation and says these claims beyond the Da Vinci Code foolishness. It's the stuff where he is saying, man, Christianity can't be trusted. I grew up as a fundamentalist. I grew up as an evangelical, and now I'm agnostic, atheistic, but agnostic at best. And the arguments he's using to a gullible generation seem like it's groundbreaking when they've already been answered and refuted throughout church history. But because the people who were in conversation with millennials do not perform due diligence to know church history, to know what councils have determined, then they're trying to find ways to do apologetics through Google search engines rather than looking at the heritage of our faith.
Amen. Amen.
And so we have to begin to say, no, if you as a scholar, Erman, are really going to be a true scholar, your process of argumentation is flawed because you are making the bias for your own academic consensus and saying that those are the only scholars when that is not the consistent, that's not the consistent consensus in academic historical studies of Christianity.
Amen. Amen.
And millennials want to hear that stuff.
That's right.
This is not the same day where it was lecturing, you turn in your papers, and they're going to comply to jump through the hoops to get the grade. Stanford University, Harvard of the West, did a study on millennial education. The professors were dumbfounded. They were frustrated at this generation because when they were coming to the lectures, all the kids wanted to do was talk back. They didn't want to be lectured at. Well, so that doesn't make sense because, excuse me, son, you wait. This is a lecture. This is not a dialogue. This is a lecture. And then when students went and turned in papers, and the students were actually okay to get a C average, and the professors were angry at the fact that these kids would settle for a C level, they went and did a survey. And what they began to find is when the professor got away from the lecture model and they turned to a method called dialogic, where you throw propositional truth, you get feedback because it arouses conversations and questions, and you come back and you work through a semester with that, the students excel better because now they see the professor is one who is approachable, and he has time invested in the students' lives outside of the lecture hall. He's having coffee with them. He's going to some of their rallies, some of the demonstrations. He's actually paralleling some, giving a historical context to some of the issues that they're passionate about. He's like, well, in the 60s, this is what was going on. In the 70s, this is what's going on. And because of this, you can't forget about this in 84. So like he would actually now find a different way to impart knowledge by intersecting with their passion. Versus saying it's always been done in a lecture format, write your 3 papers, shut up and go through the process and get a good GPA and get out of my class. And that's when Stanford University-wide said we have to stop the way that we are currently employing this methodology of education. If we're going to be good practitioners, we've got to adjust with the times. Is this not what we marched for in the 60s? Is this not what we said? Remember, don't trust anybody over 30? Well, now they're like in their 60s, right? Like, it's that reality that my generation has witnessed that. So all that to say, Paul says, the reason that he had affectionate desire for them, the reason that he made gospel investments, and he was ready in a moment, and he did it, is because he said, you become very dear to us. It's the Greek word agape. He had an agape love of God for those of Thessalonica. God's love is demonstrated in action, John 3:16. For God so loved the world. We know the passage, but the way it's written in the Greek puts the emphasis on how God loved, not who God loved. We live in a generation where everyone wants to focus on who God loved, but it's like, but the text says how God loved, and it's a demonstration by allowing his son to be smashed in the place of sinners. Romans 5:8, while we were ungodly, separated from God, had no good inside of us. It was at that moment at our lowest that he demonstrated his love by dying on the cross for sinners. So if he loved us there, why won't he love us now? So the love of God is something that the millennials want to see employed through our actions. They want you. We want you. You can give anybody your time. You used to say, show people how much you care by showing, you spell love, T-I-M-E. Look, you and I know, we can go to work 40 to 60 hours a week and we can just show up. But our heart is not involved. You can easily give somebody your time without giving them you. That's called being present. But to be engaged is something completely different, and that's what my generation is praying for. Individuals who are engaged by giving themselves to them, not just their time.